How's it going, Andrew?
Sup, Matt? How you feeling, sunshine?
Yeah, let's not go there. Tired, exhausted. Yeah, dealing with my new obsession.
What's that?
Hagley West watches.
Oh, really? Is that a new official sponsor that's unofficial along with Teddy Wedgers?
I would love to have Tim and Hagley West watches be an unofficial sponsor. Yes, they're very nice.
Put them on with Jack Blackberry.
Right.
What is our list that we have grown out now? We got Teddy Wedgers, the OG unofficial sponsor, the best pasties in the West down in Madison. We got Jack Blackberry because nice.
Specifically Blackberry.
Yeah,
yes.
not Jack Daniels. Jack Blackberry's sponsor. We got, who knows? If our listeners remember, remind me of all the sponsors we've been plugging with no money down.
Right.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, no.
Yep, go ahead.
I ordered my first one like a month or so ago.
Maybe for our listeners, explain what you're talking about would be helpful.
What? I said Hagley West watches. So
I can say random fake words too.
Well, you can Google those. I don't know. A bunch of people have probably seen them. It's Tim Hayden. He's got a pretty big social media following. Started a watch company in his kitchen in the UK. Sold his house to finance it to make it big, and then continued rolling. You've probably seen the Love Your Journey videos. That's that guy. They're really nice watches, but I got my first one like a month ago because he was live on Facebook and he was offering 30% off with the chance to win a second one. And I was like, yeah, I wanted to get one anyways. And then like a week ago, he was live again and he was offering buy one, get one. So I got two more.
So on this episode of Time for Watches with Matt and Andrew, so I've been having a separate watch problem. So I was on Reddit and I see that there was a post talking about the tiny pocket in Levi jeans. And they were like, yeah, that was designed for pocket watches. Like, that's why it was made. That was like the innovation. Like, guess what? You can put your pocket watch right in here. So then I've been putting my pocket watch in my jean little pocket, colloquially known as the change pocket these days, or probably for others a drug pocket. I've been putting a pocket watch in there. So I've been on the pocket watch game.
I used to do that all the time. So
I do like the sheer amount of pretension I can have when instead of reaching for my phone, I pull out a pocket watch and stare at it. The pretension in the air. You can cut it with a knife, and I kind of love it. You're like, well, let me check the time. You pull out the pocket watch, and everyone's like, this mother effer with his pocket watch.
Right, yeah. Yep. No, I used to do that. I used to do that all the time when I was still under the impression. So I rode with a guy for a long time, back young in my riding career, who saw me wearing a watch once, and he was like, hey, bikers don't wear watches. He was an old salty dog biker. He was like, you're supposed to, your cell phone's got the time on it. You're supposed to at least present an image that you don't care or want to know what time it is. So we don't wear watches. Since I wore a wallet chain anyways, I just did a pocket watch on a chain.
So instead of looking at your time, you could add some pretension to it.
Right.
Enchanté. You know what's messed up, though? The only pocket watch I have right now, where is it? Is triangular because it's a Masonic one, so I can't even read it. So I just pretend when I look at it. It's in a triangle. So it's even more pretentious. I look at my watch, and they're like, is he reading the time? And I look at it and go, triangle, and just put it back in my pocket.
Right. The only time I wear a pocket watch now is if I'm in a three-piece suit or a tux.
To be fair, I wore my pocket watch yesterday. I was out in the world, and I had my suspenders on, another problem that I've developed, a cambric shirt, or Camry shirt, or whatever it is, and then my pocket watch was in the little pocket. And I had not one, but two strangers compliment me on my outfit, which I don't think has ever happened. So I was like in compliment city. Wow. So now I'm stuck with it. Like, I'm going to keep doing it because, as a guy, you never get compliments. And when you do, you're like, I guess I'll do this forever now. I guess this is the only outfit I wear.
Are we confident they just weren't trying to be polite because they
that I was autistic or something? Maybe. But to be fair, the first compliment came from my barber, and I didn't really take that seriously because barbers are always nice. And I went, oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Then I went into the smoke shop to get, and the guy was like, hey, I just want to say I really like your outfit today. And I was like, holy moly, we got 2-for-1 special, baby. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to wear this outfit every day until it gets destroyed, I think.
and they were both people who were paying in some way, shape, or form. So, all right.
No, I'm gonna say the smoke shop owner, he never says a word to me besides every time I walk in, he goes, "Ha, buddy." And he says it just like that, and I just go, "Oh my god!" And he goes, then I go, he's like, "Anything else, buddy?" And I just go, if he calls me buddy one more time, and then I'll buy my stuff and be like, "See you later, buddy." And that's every conversation. Every time I go in there is the exact same. "Ha, buddy." And I'm just like, "Oh my god!" And you know where he gets it from? So the guy who used to work there before him, who he replaced, was like super friendly and sociable. And you come in and be like, "What's going on, man? How's it going?" And he'd just be chatty. Great dude. He ended up getting a new career. So I think he tried to train this guy, and he's like, "Hey, just like say nice things like buddy and pal." And he's just like, "I got buddy." So then he's just like, "Ha, buddy." Every time I come in, that's all he says. But he gave me a compliment on my my outfit. So now I'm locked in just for him.
You gotta start the music, and we gotta get this going before you give me any more South Park the movie flashbacks with the buddy.
What's going on, pal? All right, friend. All right, I'm gonna hit the music.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right. So, today...
Welcome to the first episode of the season where it's just you and I and not a guest.
Yeah, I know.
Cranking out the guests. Woo!
I know. So I wanted to kick it old school, time for fellowship vibes, and we're going to talk about a philosophical topic, which is your favorite.
Oh boy. I mean, they are fun when I'm awake and alive and my brain is functioning, but yeah, let's go for it.
So for our listeners, before the podcast started, Matt went missing. He went missing, and I was like, what's going on? I'm messaging him. I was about to call the police for a missing persons report. And suddenly he appears in my chat and he goes, "Oops, I fell asleep." And I was like, oh, good thing we're talking about a philosophical topic in about 10 minutes.
It happens. I read my daughter a book.
Got a little cozy.
Stayed in there for a minute too long.
I've had it happen. Well, nothing is more like a quick shot of coffee than a philosophical conversation, and I've always said that.
Oh, yeah. All right, so I'll give our listeners fair warning. If Andrew goes on a rant, you might hear.
I swear to God, I can't do this alone, man. You got to follow me on this journey. So today we're going to talk about, so if you guys listened to our last episode, worshipful brother Frank McKenna, and he brought up an interesting topic that brought me down a rabbit hole. So I want to bring that rabbit hole to us. And so Frank, if you haven't listened, please go back to the last episode and tune in. Frank was talking about how, from his opinion, the goal of a Mason is to build their inner temple, an allegory within an allegory. So I wanted to talk about how does one build an inner temple, free form. I've read some things to add to what I already kind of thought about it, but let's just see if we can unpack it.
All right, where do you want to start since you read some things?
All right, I'm going to start you with a thought experiment, all right? So in Masonry, a lot of our symbols are presented in a material form, like something quasi mythical, historical, right? Depending on the topic matter. So in the Masonic degrees, there's a heavy emphasis put on the building of King Solomon's temple, and that's an allegory for our inner temple. The first thing I want to address is what happened to King Solomon after his temple was built. Do you know this?
Ew. Well, that's a good question.
So after King Solomon built this magnificent temple that we say Masonically looked less like the hands of man, but more like the hands of divinity, hint, hint, the internal design of it. Solomon gets done building this extraordinary temple to deity. He's gifted with wisdom, all these great stuff. You're like, God, this guy is awesome. Then he starts slipping, and he slippy slopes down, 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 down. So he proceeds to get hundreds of wives. He starts worshiping other gods. He gets some spankings for it. And then inevitably it causes like a secession crisis. And upon his death, the kingdom is split up. So where Masonry leaves it is the completion of the temple going, nice, this guy's the best. Where if you look at the continuation of the story, you go, oof. And I think that's where the start of the allegory begins, is that Solomon focused on the external temple.
Right.
But did he build an internal one?
I'm with you there. Or you could even go down a different path with that thought and allegory, is he completed the temple, right? So you could look at it in a way of he thought he completed building his internal temple.
Ooh.
So he let things slide. He didn't practice as much self-discipline, or he didn't put as much work into self-improvement anymore, and he let the temple get dusty and dirty and not used, right?
Fall into disrepair.
And forgot about all the lessons that he had learned along the way through the building of his inner temple, and was like, I completed it. I'm done. I can't get any better than I am right now. So I don't have anything else to work on. And that's when it all went into disrepair.
Oh, dude, absolutely. And that kind of hits the nail on the head, I think, is that the building of the internal temple is like the allegory I've realized is the rough and perfect ashlar is a microcosm of the exact same allegory as the temple is a macrocosm, right? One's saying, hey, just be one stone. The other's like, build the whole thing. But both of the thing where it goes, you'll never, ever build the temple. The temple is the journey, not the destination. You never arrive at a perfect temple. You never complete it. Well, you're always building it.
Right.
Until you die.
You're never done, right? If you think about in like real structures, to continue the allegory, right? If you think about real structures, they're never done. Yeah, sure, they get built, and for a couple years, they're good. There's nothing you really have to do to them. But there's always preventative maintenance, stuff that breaks that you have to fix, other various upkeep, even if it's just landscaping outside that requires upkeep, stuff like that. So the second you stop doing anything because you think it's done is the second you're in trouble.
Yeah, and with that, they say that a good way to think about it is the lodge also represents a physical temple that's supposed to be allegorically emblematic of your internal temple too. And, as two trustees here, we can think, the same thing you're talking about. If you ever sit on your heels and stop, the building falls into disrepair, and so does one's internal temple. So I would argue the internal temple is the building. You know how I was thinking about the other day? Your consciousness is the lodge that's sitting adjacent to the temple, and your subconsciousness is the moral edifice that you're building structurally through habit. When the lodge is struggling, the temple is still holding its place so that you can continue live as a living temple, not built with hands.
Right. Well, and something I felt that was interesting when we were talking with Frank about this topic was the idea. He said his temple was messy, like no architect would ever design it like that, right? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, it's like, because you're constantly building on top of the old. You're constantly adding additions and closing off wings of it, and things like that as you improve through life and going, wait, nope, I don't like that part of my personality, so we're just going to close that area off. Like that's done. I'm going to be better than that, and we're going to build this new area over here, right? And I was just like, it would be messy. It wouldn't be ugly, and to tie that back, or it wouldn't be pretty. And to tie that back to the allegory of King Solomon's temple is, it was supposed to be perfect, right? It
was supposed to be divinely inspired.
Right. Came back, or it got put together with such precision and nicety that, it looked more like the hands of the divine than of man, right? So if you build this perfect temple and you're like, this is perfect. I'm done. There's no problems. There's never been any problems. There's no parts of it we had to close off. It's just great. This is exactly how I wanted it to be. You're kind of missing the point.
Yeah, and I think the allegory you're almost alluding to within that is the idea of completion is the ego sneaking back in. And like when you're building one's internal temple, part of that process, I think, is weakening the influence of the ego, or subduing it. Subduing it would be a good Masonic word. Subduing one's ego. And the moment that you start to think, look at me, I have all these fancy pins and accolades, and I am completed my work, is when the ego starts to be like, yeah, hell yeah, you did. And you're better than everyone else because of it. And you go, oh, heck yeah, I am. And then you're like, I'm the wisest king that ever lived. I completed my temple. It's like, man, be cool? 100 wives. And you're like, oh, heck yeah. And then, that's where the warning comes from, the slide down where you fall from all the progress you made in that process. And I do think that Masonry lays out the steps required to build the temple. It's pretty straightforward in our ritual. Not straightforward as far as doing it correctly, but easy to find within our ritual, within the allegory of how one works on their rough and perfect ashlar.
Yeah, I would agree. Sorry, I was stuck in my own rabbit hole in my head, just going, who in their right mind would want 100 wives?
Someone who doesn't have to pay attention to them because he's a king and he just does whatever he wants. Someone who's like, I did the best thing ever. I deserve 100 wives.
My hand's full with one. Love you, Olivia.
Yeah, can you imagine? Those aren't wives. Those are something else, I think. They're just called wives for the sake of like some sort of old school like ethics or something. But like within that, I feel like when we're trying to say, how does one begin to address the building process of the temple, I think the working tools are given as the beginning aspects of the path. And I think when you start using them, you start to walk in the correct direction towards that edifice.
Ooh, I have another weird. I have a thought exercise for you now, right? So King Solomon funded, essentially, right, the building of the temple. He wasn't out there swinging any hammers or anything, or any gavels or anything like that. He was paying other people to do it. So was that maybe part of his downfall, is that others had built the temple for him? Maybe others had, if you want to put it in terms of the inner temple, maybe others had fed into certain parts of him, like, oh, you're so wise and you're so awesome and all this other stuff. And that's why he thought he had built this perfect temple within, and then it all went off the rails because he never really worked for it.
I think there's something there in the fact that, like, when we talk about charity, like, does throwing money at something build your inner temple, or does it help the external world? It helps the external world, but is it as transformative as laboring, in the process of doing a charitable act? I was reading something the other day, and it was talking about how the act of charity as a practice you choose to do is almost just as bad as paying to do it, because the only way that it's transformative is when your heart acts charitably without believing like, oh, this is what I do because I was told to do it. It's when you do it because your heart feels it's the right thing to do is when transformation happens. And I think, there's something similar where if you just throw money at something, you're a little bit detached, right? You're a couple miles away, even though he's like, I oversaw it. Was he writing the designs on the trestle board? No. He was talking with his peers who were hired to do it and were more efficient at it, probably because he's not qualified to do the work. But that could also, add to the allegory of the understanding that to truly have an internal, not an external transformation, you have to be the one who labors. You can't have others labor for you.
Right. Well, and if you want to add another layer onto this, it especially means less to you and will do less for your heart and everything else when you're doing it with other people's money.
Yeah, taxes.
Right. Taxes in his case,
Yep.
or, the lodge charity funds that, perhaps you weren't involved in setting up, or you know what I'm saying?
Yep, laboring behind. I mean, that's an interesting thing when you look at like the transformative nature of Masonry is like, a lot of us, you and I in Lodge have been pushing for like our charitable activities need to be very local. I need to see it. I can't just dump money into a place and hope it does something.
Right. And we want to go out there if it's not something like Stars and Stripes Honors Flight where we're just going to be like, cool, hey, we're going to give you some cash,
sponsor 3 people,
be able to sponsor 3 people. If we're available next time you have one land or whatever, we'll try to be there for the reception thing, right? But we've tried to do things that have actually done exactly what we're talking about, where we've gone and done the labor. Right, park cleanups. Now, whatever we end up doing with river keepers, if you're still planning on moving down that road,
we're still doing it with Milwaukee River Keepers. Yep, adopt a river.
Right. So and it does have a more local impact, which is also nice. But we're actually out putting in the labor. We're not. We're giving money to certain charities, but then we're putting our money where our mouth is and getting out there and doing the work.
Well, and early in our degrees, we say it's the internal and not external qualifications of a man, which Masonry regards, which I think is directly pointing at what we're talking about. Though we do things externally that can be helpful, such as building something for others, it's important as far as if you want to address the internal and work on your temple to actually get your hands dirty and get out there and do it yourself. Because I think not only in that process are you helping, and you might say, what's more helpful? You going out for half an hour and picking up trash, or you giving $2,000 to this group? One is externally more helpful, but the other is internally more helpful, I would say.
Well, yeah, and I would agree. And not to mention, when you organize a group of people to go out and do something like a park cleanup or a different form of charitable event where you're all working together, you're fostering conversations around why this type of stuff is important. I mean, look, when we did the podcast episode from our park cleanup, how many solid answers we got about why it was important to them to be out there doing it and what it meant to them, and the conversations that just happen around it regarding why getting out and doing the work is important, why Freemasonry is important, why reminding people we're here is important. It develops on multiple levels. You feel good. You get to feel good that you put in the work. Plus, you get to have valuable conversations and probably walk away learning something at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And that points to recommendations, I think, that is helpful for a Mason building their inner temple is the idea that you're not laboring alone. Every worker in any quarry is theoretically laboring by themselves. They all have their little things they have to do, and they're focusing. That's the internal mission, right? But they're not standing alone in that quarry. There's other people working on different things. Some are on a column, some are on a stone, some are over looking at some decorations, right? But they're all working, and I think within our allegory, that's emblematic of the fact that they're all working internally, but together. And I think doing charitable activities together helps foster that environment for us to know, like, hey, we're all working on ourselves, but in this aspect, we're going to work on ourselves together.
Right. Well, it's to add an allegory into an allegory. It's an individual team sport. It's baseball. That's what I always refer to baseball as. Baseball is a team sport, but pretty much it's a team because you're relying on the guy next to you to do his job.
Now, is
You're
every
not-
sport
no-
an individual team sport?
No. Here's the reason I say this. In football, you have to have 11 people moving in sync and acting as one single unit, right? In baseball, you bat by yourself. There's not you're out there on an island. You're in center field, you're out there on an island, you're batting by yourself. You don't have to move together as a unit.
Now, well, let's add. I think what you're saying, baseball is a better archetypal example of this, but I would argue every sport is. Like even in hurling, where that ball comes skipping down the field, I'm not thinking, what's my team doing? I'm thinking, what is my tiny job within this greater machine? Like, I need to pick up, I need to break space, I need to find an open target. If there's not an open target, I got to figure something out, right? And so I think almost every sport, even though baseball is a more extreme example of that, where it's very individual, I think almost all of them are you're always focused on your small piece in the greater puzzle. And in our allegory, that'd be the smaller puzzle of building a temple.
Right. No, you could extrapolate it to all team sports. I just picked baseball because, like you said, I think that's like the most extreme example of an individualistic team sport.
And, within that, within our degrees, when we're looking at the individual things we're given as people who are all working on the same temple, because I'd argue that the internal temple, even though you're supposed to build one in yourself, you're all working towards a greater temple, which is, improvement of your communities and humankind through the smaller piece, right? We're given working tools to give us the implements that we need to start the work. And we've done some episodes on the podcast about the 24-inch gauge. If you can't manage your time, you're not going to be an effective workman on yourself. Common gavel. If you can't chunk away at your ego and chunk away at your superfluidities and your vices, you're not going to be able to be a quality workman to work on your temple. If you can't set yourself up rightly by the plumb, then you're not going to be trustworthy. So all these things are about cultivating virtues. And those virtues are to make you a living temple or a perfect ashlar in our allegories.
Well, yes. And you have to build your own inner temple first, right? You have to think of it like the message that you always get on the airplane. If the oxygen masks drop, put your own on first before you help anybody else put theirs on.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you can't continue to function, you can't help anybody else. So you need to work on that inner temple and get yourself to a good point before you can help build the temple of your community or the temple of your state or the temple of your country, right?
Yep. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the Hermetics used to say. Same vibe. Do you want to go down a windy road?
Sure.
So I knew that this was in Wilmshurst somewhere, that he mentions it. So I went in and found it. And I know you're reading Wilmshurst right now for your book club, so maybe this will sound familiar. Mm-hmm. He mentions it not briefly. He mentions it quite a bit. But one quote that stuck out to me was, "The Temple of Solomon is a symbol of the human soul, and its building is the process of man's spiritual evolution from material to divine."
Ooh. There is always an undercurrent of that theme, isn't there? Through various things in the world of man constantly working towards the divine, right? Trying to emulate it, trying to make ourselves a good representation of it, trying to get to that point. We'll never get there, obviously, but it's that constant struggle to move in that direction.
Well, and it's like this constant undercurrent of man being split into two worlds that seem at odds with each other. There's the animalistic nature. If you watch Joe Rogan, he'd be like, we got monkey brains. You're like, yeah, we got monkey brains. And you're like, yeah. And so there's the more rugged and rough ashlar type of proto-human minds of survival of the fittest. Let's go. Let's always be more animalistic. And along the way, philosophers started going, but we're equipped with something that a lot of other species don't get, which is the ability to reach for something not that. And so a lot of times that's defined as divine. In various traditions, you'll see it everywhere. There's always that duality. There's animalistic, instinctual, and there's high-minded and high places, right? And, I think in the Christian tradition, we have in, Corinthians, they say, do you not know that you are the temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells within you? And then they also say, for you are the living temple of God. And you'll see that type of allegory in a lot of religious traditions, saying that there is a higher nature that's already in you, just like there's a higher nature in the world. It is your duty to build that temple within yourself to, raise yourself up to live up to that divinity.
Yes.
Well, I think that's the challenge, right? Like, what I was also thinking about? In the physical world, what do temples do?
They're a gathering place, is where I would start.
Do temples by themselves evangelize?
No, it requires
temples
or a person.
Temples draw people to them to find their light as a living structure. So I'd argue that a Mason who builds their internal temple doesn't need to evangelize about this is this is that. People are drawn to them by the way they act.
Yeah. I could give you that.
So it's like the way that a Mason, we always say in Masonry, like lead by example, right? The way a Mason should be known is by the way he carries himself. And I think that's an extension.
Even when no one is looking.
Yep. I think that's the extension of that allegory. That like a temple just sits there, but people are drawn to it because it feels high-minded and it's awe-inspiring, and it creates a atmosphere of light.
Yeah. You know me. If I agree with you and I don't have it, totally add immediately onto it, I'm just gonna. That's the response you're gonna get, and when something's well said, there's no reason to screw it up by saying more.
I know, but I think what struck me when I was thinking about that is, and we've talked about it in the past, is that we've all met Masons that you're like, oh, you know what I mean? There's something about the way they carry themselves and do stuff that you go, okay, that's something you want to emulate. And a temple serves that same function. It inspires people to want to seek higher ethical, moral, or philosophical heights. And I think that when you see Masons who oftentimes are more quiet and they're more thoughtful and they're emulating a lot of the philosophy we teach, it has its own weight to it.
I guess as I've been sitting here trying to digest all this, I'm going to challenge you on this one a bit. And is it the temple or the people that choose to gather there that actually draws people in? Easy way out answer.
It's not the easy way out answer. It's the paradox of it. Since the temple draws them, more people draw them there, and since more people are there, more people are drawn. It's the natural progression.
So then in this allegory, would you say that a more ornate temple would do the job better than a simple, plain, nondescript temple?
I would say both temples are designed with different vibes, but both serve a similar function. So you can see that in a lot of different type of places of worship around the world. Some are very ornate and some are very simple, and that is more conducive of the character of the place it's in and the people it's serving than of anything else. And so though a mighty cathedral is designed by its architectural function to inspire awe, to have acoustics that are badass, to do a bunch of functions, the same can be true in a rural, small temple space. It's the fact that it has a sacredness to it that I think draws people, but both have their own function.
Fair. That's actually a really good answer.
So as far as like productive ways to try to build the temple, I think the working tools have been talked about ad nauseum, not only on our podcast, within our degrees and within a lot of other podcasts. And I think those are worth pointing to, but we don't need to delve deeply into because that information is widely accessible to Masons. But I think that's one of the first steps. I think the second step is, and we've talked about this before, memorization of the ritual starts as memorization and then leads to internalization as you build it into your subconscious.
Right. No, I would agree. I would agree with you with that on memorization. I think catch quite all of what you said because your mic cut out pretty hard there.
No,
I'm going to be
weird.
curious to see if it cut out on the recording. You were on it, so it wasn't your distance to the mic or anything. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just something with our connection or with the platform we're using to record this, but it's been happening on and off here as we've gotten farther into the podcast, and sometimes for a decent chunk. So hopefully those will be on the recording. But
to reiterate, it's the fact that memory work, when not used simply as memorization for the purpose of regurgitation, but when memory work serves as a function of internalization, that you're storing the philosophy of Masonry within your mind. It has a cognitive function that assists in the building of the temple. It won't build it for you, but it puts the ornaments and the movements of the ritual within the temple of your mind.
I've always kind of wondered if that's maybe part of the reason we've stressed memorization over the years so much, was that one of the secrets of Masonry was the ways to internalize its teachings was to actually memorize this stuff rather than just having it readily available. The mouth to ear teaching and how much of it you're able to retain and keep with you at all times is part of the goal, because it means you can be in a constant state of learning or reflecting upon those when the situation might come up that, triggers something in your mind.
Absolutely. And we're not the only, we're not the only tradition done that. Within Islam, there's an emphasis on memorization of their holy writings. Within older tradition, not older, but sometimes contemporary, sometimes older. Within Druidic traditions, it was all mouth to ear, partially because of the lack of writing, of course. But I think with writing, when it came along, you'll see traditions that had writing still put emphasis on the importance of internalizing through memorization. And it's not memorization as the end goal. It's memorization as the beginning goal. Because once it's internalized, like you said, you can not only pull straight from your mind the words. I don't know if you do this. I can imagine the floor work and everything else when I'm studying. I can see it in my head, which in a way is an internal temple.
Yeah. Well, it's an internal lodge room, that's for sure.
which is a symbol for a temple.
Right. I know.
Yeah. And so, when I look back at the origins of craft masonry and the origin of the Shaw lodges in Scotland, there was an emphasis on the memory of Loki that I like to keep talking about, the memory palace you build to assist in memory work. And I'm fairly convinced that the reason that was so important and has always been kind of on the fringes of the modern craft, where people are like, build a fake temple in your mind and put all your ritualist symbols in it, is that through the building and use of that memory technique, you're almost building a visual temple that you can pick up from within your own mind, that is symbolic of the internal temple, which is the temple of the soul that you're attempting to build.
I like it. I actually like all of the connections we've drawn, and I'm going to have to listen to this podcast a couple times, actually, because I think there might be a paper I'm interested in writing somewhere in the weeds on this one.
Do you want to go down another trippy rabbit hole?
All right, last one, though, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Hey, I'm the one who's got to edit. So, what is the vibe?
I've got a War Ragnarok to play, all right?
What is the vibe inside a temple? And I'm not talking about some of these modern, and no offense to people who are in modern temples. If you're in an old school temple from older traditions, what is the vibe inside of a temple?
Catholic or not? No, I'm just kidding.
You could include Catholic within that umbrella that includes many others. When you walk in, what's the vibe? You go into an old cathedral.
The vibe in a Catholic church is very different.
You walk into an old Catholic cathedral or any other temples that are similar. When you walk in, how does it sound in there?
I'm trying to dig back into my brain when I was fortunate enough to spend a month in Germany and visited some of the older churches. I'm trying to pull that memory out somewhere here, because that was only 26 years ago now.
Is it loud? Is there a lot of noise?
See, this is what I'm getting at. I guess it kind of depends on where you're walking into, because some of them feel heavy when you walk in the door. They're more subdued and solemn and taking things very seriously. And you can go to other ones where it's a celebration and it's joyous and welcoming, and there's such a wide variety of it. But I would say if you had to boil it down to one common theme that should exist, and hopefully does in most of them, is welcoming and warmness, let's say.
Sure. And that was a direction I wasn't thinking you were going to go in, but that definitely exists within the ecosystem of a temple. But generally, the etiquette in most temples, when you enter them, if they're not in active service, right? If you're in service, it's a different vibe, is quiet. Yeah. You're not supposed to talk loudly when you don't feel like if you're walking into one of those old churches in Germany and it's not an active service, are people yelling and talking very loudly?
I mean, hopefully not. There should be some sense of reverence, right? Respect for the place that you're in.
In my experience, going through cathedrals in Milwaukee and in Spain and elsewhere, if you're there not during service, everyone's talking in hushed tones, and it is weirdly quiet. And you can hear your footsteps echoing through the space. And the point I bring this up is to say, I think part of the building of an internal temple is having an internal center point where you can find peace and quiet within yourself.
Right. No, I would agree. I overlooked that facet of it. I would have gotten there had my brain not taken me in a totally weird direction, and had I thought about when I was in Texas a few years ago and went to the Alamo, because the Alamo is a church. So, that was that experience. It was very subdued in there, I would say. I mean, there's people and tour guides and stuff, but yeah, it was subdued. Nobody was really talking loudly. Men were taking their hats off, right?
Well, and I think to your point, I don't think you're wrong by any aspect of your interpretation of it, because I think that is an element that the temple can be a joyous and boisterous space, but it can also be a quiet and secluded and reverent space too. And so, when you talk about the duality within man, I think a lot of us have an easier time putting on the joyous version of the temple and a harder time creating the solemn, eerily quiet juxtaposition of the same space. And I think part of the building of the temple is the ability to have both, maybe.
Right. No, I would say that it definitely can be. It's the ability to survive in the loud situations, right? And also the ability to go sit in the woods by yourself and just listen to the birds chirp.
Yeah, the ability to sit in your own silence, I think, is an aspect of temple building, whether that's in a cathedral or a deer stand. The ability to sit in silence comfortably, I think, is something that also can be strived for within temple builders, speculative temple builders, I should say.
Well, I think it's actually a very important skill. I think it's a skill that is somewhat lacking in today's world, to be able to sit in silence and not sit there and just be in your brain going, I'm bored. When you're sitting in silence, it really affords you the opportunity to take everything in, A, with your other senses, and B, it allows you to work some stuff out in your head that, maybe you can't do when you have all the noise cutting through it.
Yeah, and to be able to sit with your own thoughts without being
distressed
and to actually sit with yourself. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the one thing that, in the last 2-ish years that I've been, there's not a working tool for silence, but the entire entered apprentice degree is staring at you going, and you're like, yeah, no. I'm like, and you're like, yeah, I get it. So it's not a working tool. It's kind of a philosophical theme, especially in the entered apprentice degree, that I've been trying to work in, because I'm very predisposed to non-silence and activity and doing that. So I've been trying to get better, and I have been in small ways to let silence linger.
Right. Well, and it's a really hard skill to learn in today's world because there's always noise. There's always the ability for there to be noise, even when you're sitting out in the woods.
Buzz.
Yep.
Buzz.
Your phone, everything. And I think people are scared of it, and rightfully so, because to sit with your own thoughts can be really disturbing at times, especially if you haven't practiced it or walked down that road before and just explored where your brain's going to take you. It can be disturbing. It can be scary. It can bring up past trauma. But it also affords you the opportunity to work it out. And I think people need to learn to be comfortable with the silence. I've even noticed in conversations, when there's a lull in the conversation and silence lingers too long, somebody gets uncomfortable and has to break it.
Me.
And it's like, well, no, it's not always you. But like, sometimes it's okay to just sit there in silence. You don't always have to be talking. You can sit there in silence and still be doing something together and still connecting on a certain level, right? And maybe connecting through the silence and what your experience of that silence is. So I honestly think this was not something I expected to be talking about on this episode, but that's honestly something I feel like is severely lacking in the world, is the ability to be in silence and the ability to be bored. Nobody can be bored anymore. People say they are, but there's no possible way you can be with all the different things we have to occupy ourselves.
Well, and I think that is a disadvantage that we are lost on us in the modern world. Is back in the day, you didn't have a choice. Some parts of your day are going to be very quiet, and maybe you're just walking to the shop, which is going to take, I don't know, an hour, and you got your donkey with you to help carry stuff, and you're just like, well, part of my day is just silence. There's no cars. I don't always have people to walk with me to chat with. I just have to sit with it. Nowadays, when you see people walking on the street, they're not just walking, they have headphones in. If they don't have headphones in, they're looking at their phone. If they're not looking at their phone, they're talking on their phone. And so with that, I think we have lost something that in the past was something that was just given to you, and now it's something you have to seek out. I was talking with one of our brothers, and he's been thinking about and probably is going to end up going to stay at a monastery where you can be temporarily for like a week sequestered, and you have to basically be a mini monk for like a week, and you have to do the tasks, you have to do the various times of prayer and all that stuff, but you get sequestered. And I was like, oh.
Well, that sounds fun. I want to
put your phone away. Yeah, you set your phone, you tell people like, hey, for the next 4 days, like, I am sequestered. And, in most the various monastic traditions, even when they're not most of them are not fully silent, right? They just say, don't do idle chit chat. So if you're saying something, It's like, hey man, I need you to clean pots. You know what I mean?
Right,
so it's directed speech instead of idle chatter.
No small talk, purposeful speech. Right?
Yeah, like if you're saying something, it's for a direct purpose, and then you return to silence. And I was like, God, I kind of think I need that, because honest to God, I'm so bad.
I'm down. I am down. We should just build like a compound that you can rent out to do that.
We should just build a compound, and I'm the cult leader. And I'm going to spew not. Okay, sorry, I went down to run. And we both get rich, but everyone else just pays us their money.
People can pay us. We'll lock their phones up somewhere where they can't get to them. They can go sit in a room for 4 days in silence.
I think it's like a yoga retreat, right? In the words of Creed from The Office, I've been both a cult leader and a cult follower. Being a follower is way more fun, but being a leader, you make way more money. You're like, yeah.
Oh, no, that sounds lovely, actually. And I guarantee you that if you said that to a bunch of, and maybe it's something that comes with age, but I also feel like it's a generational thing. But I feel like if you said that to some of the guys that are like 20 years younger than me, it would be like, oh, that sounds terrible. And I feel like even when I was their age, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, that sounds cool, let's go do it.
I think that we'll find that the same issue that we were not in our development years dealing with has still kissed us. And so we still have some of the dust on us of like I got to check my phone, I got to do all this stuff, I got to do this.
Yeah.
So you have to imagine the generations after are just even more anxious, and we're already anxious as people who didn't grow up with it at all times. We already carry that, and you just have to imagine that generations that have only known that just have more intense anxiety about it, is how I imagine it.
Yeah, no,
and
rightfully so. All this stuff came into my life later on. I grew up with some of the boredom and some of the silence, and I can't imagine what it would be like to have grown up without to learn how to handle it, not to mention the fact that, even people my age and certainly everybody younger has through like 300 different once-in-a-lifetime events at this point.
Yeah, right. What dwells on me about the silence and circumspection recommendation, too, that I reflect on is since I was born with a fraternal twin, I didn't even have a womb by myself. I had different rooms in the same mom.
Ever known silence?
I shared a room until college. In college, I shared a room. Then I got roommates. Then I got a girlfriend and moved in with her. Then I got a wife. So I have never once lived by myself. So I have never had even that experience of someone who's just lived alone or even had their own room. Not even once.
Right.
So I am especially effed up when it comes to the ability to sit with myself. And that's one thing that I'm very interested in my mid-30s right now or whatever. Low mid-30s.
All right. Well, tell you what. When the weather gets slightly nicer, I'll drive you up to the cabin up north. We'll make sure you have enough food and water to get through. I'll drop you off on a Friday afternoon. I'll leave with your phone. I won't go far.
And watch me through the scope of your rifle.
Yep. I'll come and check in on you Saturday. And then we'll take you home on Sunday. And no TV, no phone.
And I had this weird thought that I'm like, maybe on Sundays I should just sequester myself and just like sign language to my children and wife and be like, today I don't talk for the first time in your lives. They'd hate it. No, I know. I think it's something that I'm very curious about because if you look at any faith tradition, almost universally, solitude and silence are always held in high esteem and almost, I can't even think of one off the top of my head that does not include that somewhere. And so it's clearly important and helpful.
Well, and so we can reinforce the importance of silence. I think this is a good time for us to end this episode and get out of our listeners' ears.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Please follow us on our socials, but don't turn notifications on unless you want to because we don't want to be a distraction. And we're going to leave you with 6 minutes of silence before the outro music.
Why 6 minutes of silence? Don't do that to them.
We're going to leave them and you sit till you hear the music. I'm just kidding. Mostly.
It'll be an exercise in silence that I'm going to guess Andrew's not actually going to do.
3 minutes followed by the outro music.
Or he might. Take your chances and find out how long the silence goes for.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you the exact time, but once this episode ends, you don't get to leave until the music plays. And reflect.
All right. Everybody, if you want to get a hold of us, follow us on any of our social pages. Feel free to message us there or email us at
timeforfellowship@gmail.com, buddy.
timeforfellowship@gmail.com. You have a great day, everyone.
Take care.